Okay, so now that we can add products to our cart, what we now want to do is render the checkout page. So if I add a few items to the basket and then click on our checkout page, I just want to go here in my code to the checkout page. First thing we want to do is we want to look at the final build. So in here, we can see we have some adverts being rendered. We also have a list of all of our products in our basket, and then we also have a subtotal component, which adds all of the prices, as you can see here, as the subtotal. So first of all, what I'm going to do is create this advert component, which I'm actually just going to bring in. So if I just copy it and paste it in my components folder, essentially this adverts component it consists of two images, which has the first image here, and then it also has the second image along with the text in here. It's got inline styling as well, which shows another way that we could add styling to our application. So now all I want to do in my checkout page is render this component. So if I close everything else off, we are now just wanting the checkout page. So in here, I'm going to import the advert in, which is the advert component, and now save and go back in here. We can now see the advert component being rendered, which is correct. I also want to import the main style component from the styles. So command space, and it's coming from the shared styles. Add that in above and also bring in a few styles. So what I'm going to do is in styles, I'm going to create a new file named checkout styles. And now I'm going to bring in the styles for this page, which has a body essentially and the title. So if we go back to the checkout page after the advert, bring in the checkout body and container. So these need closing off now. So if I close this one off and also close this checkout body off, and we also need to import all of this. So import checkout body from the checkout styles like so, and now save. So now the advert is being rendered. So in the container, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check for the basket length. So we need to get access to the basket first of all. So const basket is equal to use selector of or use app selector of, and if we go into our cart reducer, we want to get access to all of the baskets. So the way to do that is it is the select items. So if I rename this actually to select cart items and select cart items count and select cart total, so that would be more specific. So select cart items, we need to import that from our reducer like so. So now if basket dot length is equal to 0, so meaning it's empty, triple equal to 0, what we want to do is, first of all, if it is empty, we want to have a div, and this div will say your shopping basket is empty. Otherwise, we want to render a div saying you have items in your basket, like so. So now if I save, at the minute, our basket is empty, but if I was to add something into our basket, so if you click a few of these and go into here, and now it says you have items in your basket. So now we need to create the UI, which is in here. So the basket or checkout products component, and then also the subtotal. So first of all, what I want to do is in my div, I want to have the following piece of code. So we want to have a title, and we also need to get access to the count of basket. So const basket count is equal to, we could either do the reduce function here, or we could do equals select item cart items total like so, and we need to import that in. And if we import that in, so now if I save, you can see here your shopping basket, 6 items in the basket, and that's been rendered in this checkout title here. The next thing we need to do is we need to map through the basket now. So if we paste in this code here, and I'm going to render out the product for now. I want to import the cart type as the item, as we've already specified earlier. So essentially, basket.map, for each item in here, I want to return a product component passing in all of these values. So we just import this product component. And now if I save, it is rendering the relevant component, which is correct. However, there is certain styling that we need to change. So what I will do is create a checkout product component. So if we import in the cart type, which is correct, and then if we create this checkout product component now, so going into my components folder, if I just close everything off and create a new folder in here, or what I will do is I'll just bring in the checkout product component actually, because it is quite similar to the products component, but just different styling. So paste that in, and then we need to import the checkout product component. And now if I save, we now have an error saying we need to update the host name. So this is using an image. So we need to copy this and then go in our next config.js and add this URL in here because we are using the next image component. And now what we need to do is restart the server. So Control C and then yarn run dev and press enter. And we also need to refresh the page, as you can see here. So now if I add a few products in my basket and go in there, you can now see the relevant information being rendered and the styling is working correctly. The final thing we need to do is in our checkout page, after the container, we also need to add a subtotal component which tallies up all of the prices in here. So this subtotal component. So if we create this, and what I will do is I'll bring in the code for the subtotal component, which is quite self-explanatory, and I will explain it. So if I copy this and paste it in my components folder, and then we just need to control space and import this in. If I go in here, essentially we are using the app selector to get the subtotal, so the select cart total, and the quantity. So if I go in my cart reducer, this is the select cart items count. So we need to update that. Select cart items count, which is imported from our lib store / reducers. We can delete this unused import now. Essentially, we have a piece of text that talks about delivery. We have our subtotal, the quantity of items in our basket. We re-render the price component, but this time instead of passing in the price, we are passing in the subtotal, which is our select cart total from our cart reducer. And then we just have a simple import that says this order contains a gift. The Amazon button says proceed to checkout, which has no functionality. So we won't be implementing that in this build. So now if I go back into my checkout page, this only renders if the length is greater than 0. We will then render a subtotal component. So now if I save all, as you can see here now, the subtotal component is being rendered. We have 7 items in our basket, and we also have the total price here. There are a few extra things we need to do, such as configure the remove from basket. So the way we need to do that is if we go into our checkout product component, which is in here, which we copied in, we haven't looked at it yet. Essentially what this is doing is it has a container, it is rendering the image, which is on the left, with the image title and height and width. We have information for the product here, and then what we are doing is we are rendering the Amazon button, and when we click on the Amazon button, we are invoking a function called remove from basket. So if we go into the remove from basket function, what we are doing is we are dispatching the action. So use as app dispatch. As you can see here, this is coming from our cart reducer. We are using the remove from cart action in our cart reducer, and we're passing in the ID of a string. So if we go into remove from cart, this takes in a payload of an ID. As you can see here, the ID is a string. The action here, if the action.payload.id is equal to the item.id, then it will remove it from the cart or the basket item array. So it will remove it from this items array here. So now if we press remove from basket, it now decrements the quantity to 6 and the price changes. And if we continue to do that, that keeps updating, as you can see here. That is on the final build, and just to double check that is working on our build. As you can see, it is updating all the time. One final thing we need to do is this number needs to be dynamic, so it needs to add the quantity of items in our basket. So it's quite simple. All we need to do is get this select cart items count. This is being used in our subtotal component here, so we can just copy this and go into our header component and import this in here. So the quantity, we just need to import this from our select cart items count. And now instead of the number 0 being rendered. Here, all we do is pass in the quantity here and now save. So now if I add products into my basket, this number will increment, as you can see here. So the next and final thing we need to do is we need to fetch data for a single product. So if we click through on our final build through to a product, what will happen is we will get directed to /product / the product ID, as you can see here. We will then render the product here like this. We can also add to basket here, and we will also have the product review information in here. This page will have its own GraphQL query, and we will check how to fetch the individual product data using the product ID here. So we will do that next.